Greetings. My name is Pastor Philip Hale. I'm the new editor of Christian News. This video will be a short introduction. I'm, first of all, a pastor. I'm one of two pastors at Zion Lutheran Church in Omaha, Nebraska. I've been here, it'll be 5 years this summer. I take that divine call very seriously. I see Christian News as a part-time job, and I take that very seriously also. What about me? Well, first I was born in Oklahoma, but raised in Texas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I studied in college computer and electrical engineering at the University of Texas at Austin. I did not go to the Concordia there. And then from there, I worked briefly as an engineer for just a few months. Worked quite a bit during school too, for engineering company in Austin, doing microprocessors, and then went to the Fort Wayne Seminary to study theology. I'm also a father. My wife and I have been abundantly blessed. We're expecting our 10th living child here in just a couple weeks, about 2 weeks away from when I'm recording this. And so we're very excited to meet our new son. As a family, we like to be outdoors as much as possible. We enjoy fishing and camping whenever we can. I also enjoy running and playing basketball and playing with my children. I also enjoy dabbling in a few other hobbies such as brewing, computers, electronics, and welding. Like Reverend Otten, the founder and longtime editor of Christian News, I'm a bit of an outsider to the Lutheranism and Missouri Synod. I did not grow up Lutheran. I was only about 16 years old when I first knew what the word Lutheran meant. My father became very frustrated in the Pentecostal church we had been attending. I grew up in Pentecostal Assemblies of God and also non-denominational churches in Texas. And the church we're going to had some obviously unbiblical and Christian practices. And so my father took that as an opportunity to explore all the churches and find one that was more faithful to the scriptures. And so I went through adult instruction at a local LCMS church, and I had a great pastor there. One of the first books I read as a Lutheran in high school was C.F.W. Walther's Law and Gospel, the proper distinction of law and gospel. And this really opened up the scriptures to me and made a lot of things clear that were very fuzzy before. And then high school, especially during my college years when I could, I read a lot of Martin Luther. I read some more modern authors such as Kurt Marquardt, Martin Chemnitz, Herman Sassa, Eugene Klug, and various others. And I took that opportunity to really embrace and try to learn what Lutheranism is. One of the best experiences I had was to attend a pastor's continuing education conference with Professor Kurt Marquardt there in Austin, and spent a week learning from him. And that was a great thing to increase my love for theology, and because of that, and then several pastors I had who encouraged me to pursue seminary. I did go to seminary. I've been a pastor almost 13 years, I believe, all here in Nebraska. For 8 years, I was in rural Nebraska. I had a small town church, a village of 500 people, Bancroft, Nebraska. And then just after a year, I added on a vacancy and later was called there as part of a dual parish, St. John Alliance. As a new pastor, I knew that I had a lot to learn still. And so I would do research and take the opportunity to write. I would present at a local conference in Lincoln. And one of these papers that I wrote for that, Reverend Otten found and published in Christian News. He didn't know me and I didn't know him. And after that, I started, communicating with him. He would call me up after a paper and we would talk a bit about it. And he was very, very encouraging. And so I would send him various papers, articles, sermons that I thought were worth sharing. I would often write papers, try to do 1 or 2 a year and do a lot of research, really dig in with the Bible and Luther and the Confessions and kind of the modern take on it, and do an exhaustive, kind of in-depth look at it. I always have wanted a challenge outside of parish life, outside of the normal sermon Bible study routine. I feel like that keeps me very sharp in my parish activities as a pastor. And many of these things that I sent Reverend Otten, he published. We were not best friends by any means, but I do consider him a mentor. And he was very encouraging in telling me to use my gifts to continue writing. And a marriage paper I wrote that he published into a booklet. He helped me get in touch with John Warwick Montgomery, and who wrote a comment for my first book, one on Scripture. And he was very kind in advertising and being supportive throughout that process. So I do owe a debt of gratitude to him. I think I only met Reverend Otten one time. I spent a couple days, though, at Camp Trinity. Was able to eat at his table, meet his family, some of them, and it was a very edifying time. And in the same way, his family has been very helpful and encouraging in the short time I've been editor this year. So being the editor of Christian News is, to some, a politicized position, but it's really not about me at all. Christ and his word has to go out. It's to go out to all the world. And as editor, I'm not beholden to any man, even in my synod or without, or any official synodical viewpoint. Synod is not God. When I became Lutheran, I grew to love the Missouri Synod of Walther's day. And I don't think we've improved upon it today. And so whether you're Missouri Synod or not, Lutheran or not, I pray that Christian News would be a blessing to you and challenging you. And I think that's what I'm good at is helping people think through what they believe. And we often get that by reading the contrary position, by reading something that doesn't agree with us. And so Christian News can be edifying, but also challenging. And you won't agree with every article. I know I don't personally. But that is a good thing. I think that's one thing that we really lack today is a voice of clarity and true independence that doesn't have some ulterior motive. I hope that pastors and laymen and whoever reads it finds it as a resource and something thought-provoking and something encouraging and hope. And if it does that, that's enough. The paper Christian News is certainly not a replacement for a congregation or being a synod. But it can be a helpful check and balance because we're not called to worship men, the leaders of the church. We're called to worship the true God, who is revealed in Jesus Christ. And thankfully, God does the real work in his word. So if we speak the word, it will reign and Christ will rule through it. And that's enough. I hope this has been a helpful introduction to get to know me as a person, as a pastor, and now as editor of Christian News. The peace of Christ be with you. Amen.